Personally, I believe that this is the best IM from Cca ever. So, hello and welcome to Aftersound Review, and this is my review for Cca Hm20. Well, it's quite a surprise because I noticed that this IM is actually have been released in 2022 and it doesn't get a lot of hype, at least from what I see, but apparently it sounds really good and it costs around $60 and using a single dynamic driver and 7 balancer armature. And just like usual, I will break down his review from the build, fit, frequency response, sound, and comparison. I do believe that this is the best CCA look I've ever seen and tried. The faceplate, I believe it's metal because I can feel a little bit of coldness here. And I don't know, it just really looks cool for me. And then you can find a honeycomb grill around this part. And the inner side is mostly made of plastic. But the unique thing, you can actually see through the light that it has tubing. At last, it has tubing here, where the other CCA multi-driver IM, I've never seen any kind of tubing before in their IMs, but in this IM, you could clearly see that there's tubing here. Well, that's quite unique for CCA IM. And there, for the cable, they're using QDC Type-C pin, just like usual, and the cable itself is typical CCA. It's not different from the usual ones. In terms of ergonomics, for 7 balancer armature and 1 dynamic driver, I do think that they have very typical shape for this IM. So in terms of ergonomics, actually it's perfect for my ears. It's small. It is small even they are using a lot of drivers, and I could use them for hours without any complaints. In terms of tonality, I could simply say that they are a V-shape, but a really nice V-shape kind of sound that I do think that this is like one of the best V-shaped IM for the CCA. I know CCA, house sound, and KZ is always V-shaped, but this one is really nice with good sub-bass extension, somehow leaner mid-range still, it's quite lean and not full enough, at least for me, but the control, it's not going to the shouty or sibilance territory, and also the treble itself is quite nicely extended and sparkling without overly aggressive. Well, let's talk about its low frequency first. Well, I need to give you a little bit of complaint here. I do feel that it has a really good sub-bass extension and control, so it has a snappy sub-bass depth rumble that it's similar to quite a mid-end kind of IM for $60. For me, it's quite impressive, but using its default stock tips, the CCA or KZ star tips, I do think that it doesn't give justice for that. So in this review, actually I've tried the vinyl type E ear tips and it gives better performance, especially for the low end rumble that gives the Cca Hm20 to have a really good and quick sub-bass punch that will sounds suitable for a lot of genre. Even you play metal, even you play pop, even you play EDMs, I do think that this kind of bass will satisfy a lot of people. Maybe if you are a really bass head person, it's lacking a little bit of thickness in the mid bass section, but other than that, I do feel that this IM has a really good sub bass. Going to the mid frequency, I do feel that the mid range is slightly leaner towards the upper mid-range and giving a little bit of hollowness in the mid-range to lower mid-range, and it somehow affects the vocal performance in this IM. It is clear, it is nicely separated from the bass section, but the problem is when you play male vocals, especially when you try a really low male vocal performance like Michael Bublé. I am missing a lot of meatness. Missing a lot of meat in the mid range. It's not thick enough. It's not bold enough for those kind of vocal. It's leaning towards female vocal, and female vocals itself, it doesn't sound really smooth either. So, but it's well controlled for female vocal, but it's avoiding sibilance and also shoutiness, but I do feel that it's lacking smoothness, it's lacking texture for the mid-range. So other than that, I feel that the mid-range is okay for the price, but definitely not my favorite, especially if you are looking for male vocal. You cannot find it here. For the treble area, it's actually quite impressive when I try to play some violin or orchestral music. I feel that there's almost no limitation for this. Again, for we're talking about $60 price point. For $60 price point, a lot of items are sound overly harsh and bright, but lacking true extension. But this item is quite nicely extended to the air frequency, but it doesn't have a lot of metallicness to it or harshness, so it's a really nice treble. I could hear a lot of details in cymbals and violins and a lot of percussion in upper region frequency. But maybe again, my just a little bit of complaint here, I do find that the timbre and texture for the violin is kind of just a little bit rough. It's not very smooth, it's not really organic or really natural that in that kind of thing. But it's just me being nitpicking for timbral kind of sound. But other than that, for me, the tonality of this IM is nice. It's really nice for a V shape from CCA. It's okay for a lot of genre. Maybe if you are looking for only, maybe my complaint is about that mid-range. I do feel that the mid-range is one of the things that I miss the most when I'm hearing this. It's lacking thickness in the mid-range section. It's lacking a body to the mid-range. So when you hear vocalist, I do feel that it's lacking body and it's lacking presence. But other than that, if you're tolerating to that kind of section or frequency, I do find that this IM is just really good. Now here's another really good thing about this IM is also about its technical. Well, for 8 driver for each ears, I do think that they really sound like a multi-driver IM. I wouldn't say that they have same performance as the Moondrop S8 with 8 drivers. Also, it's different whole different level already. But for $60, again, we're talking about price point, I do feel that this IM is one of the best in terms of technical, in terms of detail, in terms of separation and imaging. It's a well-rounded performance. You can hear small micro details from orchestra, and also you get a really nice three-dimensional soundstage, even though it's not really expansive, but the 3D-ness is there. And yeah, there's a level of layer and resolution for $60. Again, I do find that this IM is even better than the Qkz Hbb Con, which is one of my favorite for under $100 IMs. Now let's talk about direct comparison. Comparing this IM with the best KZ multi-driver IM, for me the KZ AS16 Pro. Well, the KZ AS16 Pro is more thick in tonal. It's more towards male vocal. It's the opposite. Both have good bass, but AS16 Pro has thicker bass, while this Cca Hm20 has somehow deeper sub bass and more well controlled, I think, with better texture. But in terms of vocal, they both are not perfect. This Cca Hm20, for me, it's too thin, while the KZ AS16 Pro is too thick. It's lacking lower treble elevation, making female sound restrained. Well, this, yeah, this is just opposite in those kind of sound. In terms of technical, I do find the KZ AS16 Pro has better soundstage and imaging, but in terms of incisiveness and attack, I do feel that the Cca Hm20 is better. So they are different beasts. If you are looking for something maybe thicker and have that multi-driver sensation, KZ AS16 Pro is maybe more suitable, but personally I feel that I do prefer the Cca Hm20. Now comparing them with the Qkz Hbb Con, I do feel that the Qkz Hbb Con has more subwoofer-like bass presentation. It's thicker, much punchier, and more rumbling. But in terms of speed and control, this IM has better speed and faster decay, so it's more okay for metal or more busy tracks like that. But in terms of staging, in terms of sound stage and imaging, I do find that the Qkz Hbb is a little bit superior, especially when I'm watching movies or hearing orchestral music. And in terms of vocal, I do prefer the timbre and texture, also a little bit more thickness from the Qkz Hbb Con. So if you ask me personally, I still prefer the Qkz Hbb Con, but the Cca Hm20 offers something different. It's more attacking with better impacts for and clarity for upper mid-range and treble area. Yeah, so as an overall for this IM, it's not my ideal tonal, it's not my ideal timbre, but I should say if you comparing them with other IMs, I could say objectively that this is a remarkable and maybe the best all-rounder Cca IM that I've ever tried. So even though personally it's not my cup of tea, but yeah, it's really nice and I could recommend it to you if you want something has good sub bass and a lot of upper mid-range and treble energy that doesn't go into metallic, sibilance or shouty area. Overall, really nice, and this is my final score for its tonal and technical. I think that's all I could say about this IM, and thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.